Hello everyone, welcome to our program. This is a new program and it's called the White Fund Concert Series. So I'd like to start off by introducing myself and my guests. I'm Terry Kelly and this is Lynn Wilby. She is a concert pianist and piano teacher. And this is Jay Dowd and he is a trustee of the White Fund. So I think we need a little history here. The McCarthy Fund, the Catherine McCarthy Memorial Trust, funded a series of concerts at the Lawrence Public Library using the White Fund's Steinway piano. The White Fund somehow got that wonderful Steinway piano over to the library many years ago. And so the first concert series was a result of having that Steinway in the Lawrence Library. So I was asked to be the artistic director, and I very joyfully had a bunch of concerts there for many years. And in 2017, the McCarthy Trust ended the funding because they needed the funds for other purposes. And so the concert series ended, and that kind of broke my heart. But then I got a phone call from Eileen Burnell. Eileen Burnell is a trustee, one of the trustees of the White Fund, and she asked me if I would be interested in continuing a concert series at the Lawrence Library. And after I screamed and yelled and jumped around, I said, yeah. I was so thrilled to get that message. So I've been working on a concert series, and our first concert will be on November 18th by Lynn Wilby. But first, let's talk about the White Fund with Jay. So you may be wondering what the White Fund is. So would you tell us what it is,
Sure.
please?
Terry, going as far back in Lawrence's history as the 1850s,
Yep.
Daniel Appleton White sold his farm to the Essex Company, and in fact, we're probably sitting on White's farmland right now.
Wow.
His farm extended from the Spicket to the Merrimack, and as Lawrence was forming a project undertaken by the Essex Company, of course, White sold his land, and we have the basis for North Lawrence. Well, he kept a small portion of land where there was a family gravesite, and much later he sold that final parcel of land, and the funds derived from that sale became the basis for what would eventually become the White Fund. And his purpose in establishing the White Fund was to set up a lecture series for the citizens of Lawrence, especially the young people who'd be working in the mills and might not be attending school as frequently as he thought they should. So he wanted to offer arts and science and travel to the young people in the city of Lawrence. So he did this by means of a lecture series. He was also very interested in establishing a library in the city, in that he was a very highly educated man for his day. And a portion of that land that he sold in order to build the White Fund, he put aside for citing a public library. And that became the location of what we call the Old Library. On the
beautiful old library.
Hampshire and Haverhill Street. And it wasn't built until 1892, although the land was put aside in the 1850s. So the first White Fund lecture took place in the 1860s, and we have had a continuous lecture series in progress here in Lawrence since that date. Recently, we have added the music series. We were co-sponsors with the McCarthy Trust for a few years, and brought that to the library. And for obvious reasons, the White Fund's connection to the public library is solid, and our intent is to show off Lawrence and show off our local artists to our citizens as best we can, in our public library.
And with that beautiful Steinway
Yes.
and the beautiful auditorium.
Well, the Steinway, one of its owners was Irving Sargent. And Irving Sargent, of course, was a White Fund trustee for pretty close to 50 years.
Yep.
He was a prominent attorney in the city. And when he retired from the White Fund, he donated that Steinway, which graced his living room at the corner of Woodland Street and East Haverhill Street.
Yep.
That's where he lived. His office was on Essex Street. He was a partner in Sargent and Sweeney. And his commitment to the Lawrence Public Library was obvious. And today the auditorium is named for him.
Yeah, right. Well, Miss Barker, I don't know if you know Miss Barker. She was my biology teacher. And she was the one who told me about the Steinway, because when the McCarthy Trust first established the concert series, well, it wasn't the concert series. It was, I think, 2004 when it began. But Miss Barker gave my name as one of her most memorable students, and that doesn't necessarily mean best, but she was my biology teacher. And she gave my name to Jean Shinto, and Jean Shinto was writing the history of Lawrence, Huddle Fever.
I remember it well.
And so Jean interviewed me at her home, and that was Miss Barker's home at one time.
Miss Barker's home on Prospect
And when
Street.
as I was leaving, Jean said, "Look at this. My husband just got this piano." And so she said, "Can you play it?" And I said, "Yeah." So I sat down and I played a little Beethoven. And she said, "Oh, wow." So I guess she told her husband. And next thing I got a phone call, and he said, "Would you give a concert on that Steinway and talk about the history of the Steinway piano?" And it's sponsored by the White Fund.
Right.
So I was one of the White Fund lecturers.
Right.
So
and Bob was Bob Frischman.
Frischman
was
is
my
Jean's
predecessor
husband. Yeah.
as a White Fund trustee.
Oh my goodness, it's a small world, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So I did that concert lecture, and the Steinway had been restored and rebuilt,
Right.
and it's just beautifully done. And they had to shorten the keys just a tiny bit. So of course you've played it, Lynn,
Yes.
and isn't it delightful
And
to
it has
play?
a beautiful touch.
It's
really
a
nice tone.
beautiful piano. So I played a couple of concerts on it, and then Tom Caffrey, one of the trustees of the White Fund, said, "We need more of these concerts." And I said, "Well, I can't keep doing them. We'll need other people." So I was invited to a meeting of the trustees of the library, and somehow I got appointed as the artistic director. And I said, "I don't know how to be an artistic director." And my husband was at the meeting at the time, and he said, "You'll figure it out." So I did. And
Terry, Attorney Sargent and Judge White would be pleased to know that you have taken on this project.
oh,
in their names.
it was so wonderful. It's, I think, the best thing I've ever done. I just love it so much. It was such an honor. And so I got some people together and hired pianists to come, and then we had chamber music, so we had piano, violin, cello, and it was so exciting. And my husband did all the publicity work. I didn't know how to do computer stuff and all that, but he did it all. And he passed away almost 3 years ago, and he left me all this information so that I can carry on. And as we started out with just the McCarthy Trust, the White Fund joined in, and the funding was all from the McCarthy Trust and from the White Fund.
Right.
So those two trusts paid for so much beautiful music and so many wonderful performers, artists who came to this area, and we're thrilled to see the library and the piano and the wonderful
And
audiences.
the series is intact. There
The
are two
series-
shows this year.
Yeah, we have 2 shows, and there might be 3. I don't know, I'm working on that possibility. But so this year's concerts will feature Lynn Wilby And she's going to play on November 18th at the library, and it's a concert dedicated to the people of the Merrimack Valley. It's supposed to be something to heal us and soothe us after the terrible gas explosion. And there's a special dedication to the young man who lost his life, Leonel. So we'll have something in memory of him. And Lynn and I discussed the music, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you're going to play, but don't tell everything. Leave some secrets.
Well, the first thing when you called, you said, I just want beautiful music. I want your favorite pieces. I want you to go through your repertoire and just give me some beautiful, beautiful music. So for me, that meant, well, there has to be some Bach and there has to be some Chopin. So there will definitely be Bach and Chopin on the program.
Yeah.
I think there's something very healing about both of those. Of course, Chopin has a huge piano repertoire, so there's just tons of music to choose from.
Yeah.
So we will have that. We will also have music of Cécile Leveilly, who was my mother. And was a wonderful pianist, teacher, and composer. So I have some of her pieces that I perform regularly. I also have a stack of music about this big, of handwritten manuscripts of a lot of her compositions that were never published. So that's another project I'm working on, that I'm going through that to hear what it sounds like. Some of it I've never heard. I never heard her play when she was alive. I mean, it's some pieces I never heard her play.
She played some for me. She played
Oh
a lot
yes,
for me.
I mean, I heard many of her pieces, but in this stack of music, there are things that I'm like, I don't know what this is. I've never heard this. I've never seen this. So that's exciting.
They're all so beautiful. But I remember she played something for me one day, and I said to her, I said, I can't decide if you're Chopin or Rachmaninoff, but you sound like both. And, you know, just influenced by them.
Yes, they were great influences to her. Rachmaninoff was her favorite.
Yes, I know.
So a lot of her music has a late romantic style to
Yes,
it.
it's so beautiful.
And sometimes, you know, some of her harmonies just take on an unexpected color, which just gives them another level of beauty.
I was happy to hear that your mother came from Lawrence.
Yes.
And lived in Lawrence.
Yes,
and
yes, I grew up on Tower Hill.
We're all Laurentians.
Your interaction over the years are all Tower Hill related.
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. That was my stomping grounds.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
I'm very familiar with Essex Street. I know where I am. And the Lawrence Library, when you said something about the old library,
Right.
I'm like, oh yes, that was my library. I went to that one growing up all the time.
Oh,
Such
I was
a beautiful.
always in that library.
Yes,
in fact,
beautiful
my
place.
fondest memory is going into that library, and there was a stuffed bird, like
In the children's room.
and I had to walk by it, and I used to take my
remember it well.
book and put it up like that. So I was so scared of that bird. But that was a wonderful library. I loved it. But of course, the new one is even better.
Right.
Yes,
It's
a
just
great
gorgeous.
location.
I love going there.
Right.
It's
Yes, I've enjoyed going to the concerts over the years, the series that's been there, and I'm always honored every time you ask me to play. So this is very exciting.
Well, I'm so lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you.
But what I like about it is that, well, one of the things, I like a lot of things, but we get people coming from all over. There were some people who came from Connecticut. There were people who came from Boston. They just come from all over. And when they you know, people read things in the paper, well, we have problems everywhere, but they'll say, wow, this is Lawrence. Free parking, easy to get to, a beautiful library. Everyone is so nice. It's
Terry,
so
I've always
friendly.
felt this program was great advertising
It
for
is.
for the city
the
of Lawrence,
city.
for its citizens, for its sense of culture, its values,
History.
sense of history, values, its artistic nature.
Yeah.
This concert series contributes significantly to the prestige
Yes.
of our city, and we're happy to bring people from Connecticut and elsewhere here to listen to these great musicians.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite sayings is by W. Somerset Maugham, a great writer, and he said, culture is not an ornament. Culture is the expression of a nation's character. And so to have classical music and beautiful art and the arts here in any form, that's an expression of our character, and that's what I think is so important. And I remember when, I think I was in high school when I started going to the White Fund travelogues.
Travelogue, sure.
And we used to get the National Geographic magazine, and in the back they had all these little travel things, and it would say, go to Bermuda, and I would cut them all out, and I made a scrapbook out of them, and then I would go to the White Fund lectures, and I knew a little bit about it from National Geographic, but the lectures were wonderful.
Well, there's the product of Judge White's imagination from 1850 as it played out in your life.
But imagine if he's up in heaven there looking down and saying, wow.
I think he's quite impressed.
Yeah, yeah. So these trust funds are just, they're so wonderful.
To keep
We're so
things
lucky
for
to-
that many years, that's so exciting. I
Yeah.
didn't know all the history of
Right.
that, so that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I believe Ralph Waldo Emerson was a White Fund speaker in the early years of the trust when it was first set up. He was a well-traveled man of New England, of course, an American philosopher, and it was the judge's intent to bring the best and the brightest to share their thoughts with the youth of the city.
Yep.
And he valued his home tremendously, and wanted to make sure his legacy was something rooted in education and in art. And here we are. Here we are, all these years later, continuing a tradition in his name, and for which he deserves lots of credit.
He does deserve lots of credit. And these trust funds are so wonderful, because sometimes people pass away and there are no children to leave the money to, and they think, well, what should I do with it? But to set up a trust fund like this that reaches out to so, when you think of how many people benefited from that White Fund and the Catherine McCarthy Memorial Trust, the number of people that were treated to all these wonderful events.
Tremendous events, and an art collection as well. Although it takes a trip to Boston for the Museum of Fine Arts to see the art collection, an art collection was left to the White Fund in 1911 by Reverend Walcott, and because he knew that the White Fund had as its basis an appreciation of the fine arts. So he left in his will a collection of 17 paintings. His intent, or his hope, I guess, was that a museum would be established someday in the city of Lawrence. It never happened, but the paintings still belong to the people of Lawrence, and I and Eileen Burnell and Mary Guerrero serve as trustees for that ownership. So people of Lawrence are welcome to the Museum of Fine Arts whenever they want. And there's usually 3 of those paintings on display at all times. 2 by Camille Pissarro and 1 by Claude Monet.
There was an exhibit at the Addison Gallery at Phillips Academy in Andover a few years ago.
I remember
and
it
all
well.
the White Fund paintings were there.
Right.
And it was so well attended, you could barely get in the door. And I thought,
2007,
Yeah.
and it was a celebration, a 75th anniversary actually, of the Addison, and they were kind enough, because their specialty is, their focus is American art, they were kind enough to show our European art that once belonged to Reverend Walcott, actually once belonged to his brother in Colorado, who left it to him. And Reverend Walcott, of course, was a congregational minister serving the people of Lawrence. So he left that collection to the people of Lawrence, held by the museum. So to bring it to Lawrence, the best and safest place we could display it was the Addison and at Phillips Academy. So that was really the first time since the artwork came to Lawrence that it was displayed as close as possible
locally
to the city.
Yeah.
To the city, and everybody got to view the all 17 of those paintings that were beautifully displayed in the Addison. So it was quite a show.
And I did see them in Boston too.
Right.
But it was nicer to have them here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was quite an event, and there was a beautiful brochure that went with it.
Right.
And there's a copy of one of the paintings in the library,
The
and it's a pretty good one.
painting, the library shows 4 actually
Yeah.
of the paintings. The Northern Essex has a White Fund room on Amesbury Street, and the whole collection is hung on the wall in that room. Prints, obviously, of that collection. The second showing that you were referring to was staged by the museum at the request of the White Fund to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the collection coming to Lawrence, and that was 2011. And we had bus trips. We staged bus trips into the museum to see the whole collection, which was set up in a private viewing room. And my good friend David Meehan served as
And my good friend David Meehan.
David Meehan served as the lecturer. David is probably the city's expert on the collection, and explains the wherewithal and the purpose, shall I say, of the original owner in his collecting of such a diverse group of paintings. So David frequently serves as a lecturer, explaining the value and the intricacies of the art collection.
He is our art expert.
Right.
David and I go way back into the 1960s.
Right.
Yeah, he's quite an art expert.
Right, and served as
We're lucky to
the
have
chairman
him.
of the Lawrence High School art department in his professional career.
That's right.
Right.
And I was right up there on the 4th floor with him.
Right.
Yeah, so there is a lot of art here. There's art, there's music, there's literature. I have a TV show called Books and Authors, and we have local authors, and if anyone writes a book, and it's a good book, and they want to be interviewed, this is the place, and they get plenty of exposure.
Terry, recently, Kathy McLaren, who is the executive director of Essex Art, she displayed her project, which is a miniaturized museum, and that holds within the entire White Fund collection. And it's really quite unique. It's a tabletop museum with framed copies of the entire White collection for all to see.
That is wonderful.
And she has, I've yet to meet him, but she has a puppet version of Reverend Walcott, who will attend the grand opening, I'm sure, when that museum is ready for display.
Oh, that is
So
wonderful.
although we never got our full-sized museum with a grand collection of art, Kathy made sure we got a
mini
tabletop version that will educate the Lawrence community on the value and the beauty of the artwork that they were left by quite an interesting man, Reverend Walcott.
Yeah. Well, I think we're just about out of time. So I want to say that on November 18th, 2018, come to the Lawrence Public Library on Lawrence Street, I almost said Essex Street, on Lawrence Street at 2 o'clock, and you will hear some beautiful music and a beautiful concert dedicated to the people of the Merrimack Valley, with a special dedication to a very special boy who lost his life in the gas explosion.
Right.
So that will be a soothing, beautiful healing concert of music.
Yes.
And we hope that you will join us. And thank you for watching our program today. This is Terry Kelly with Lynn Wilby and Jay Dowd saying goodbye for now.